Coming up next on Another View, it's the Another View Roundtable. Our topics today, tests, taxes, and tragedy, and how each of these affects the African American community. What's the real story behind a controversial proposal by the Virginia's Board of Education to use race to determine performance goals on standardized tests? What does the fiscal cliff mean for African American businesses? And why is the homicide rate so high for Black men? We'll talk about it all with Roger Chesley, Carol Pretlow, Bill Thomas, and Wil LaVeist. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. The Another View Roundtable is next, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Happy holidays to you. And a sincere thank you to those who came out in support of the top 25 women in business in Hampton Roads this past Monday night. I am honored to be among this stellar group of women who work hard every day to make Hampton Roads a great place to live, work, play, and worship. So thank you for that honor. It was very, very cool. Yay. So we've got a lot to talk about with our AV Roundtable today. Please. See how that's my round table. There you go. Please welcome Roger Chesley, columnist for the Virginian-Pilot, and you can read his column every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Hey, Roger.
Hey, Barbara. Congratulations. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa.
There you go. Got it all covered. Carol Pretlow, professor of political science at Norfolk State University.
Hi, Barbara, and congratulations.
Thank you. You are so nice. Thank you. Our favorite conservative thinker and community activist, Bill Thomas. Oh. How are you, Mr. Thomas?
Oh, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
to you
Hanukkah.
Too.
And Mary, what's that other thing?
Kwanzaa.
When are you having your Kwanzaa Day party? I'll make sure I get there.
I'm not going to invite you.
And Wil LaVeist, a journalist, talk show host, and author, and one of the hardest working men I know. Hi, Will.
All right, just a little bit less hard working than you. Appreciate you all the time.
Absolutely. So, some controversy over the newly proposed annual measurable objectives from the State Board of Education. Now, the annual measurable objectives, or AMOs, provide a means for identifying schools most in need of intervention to raise the achievement of low-performing students. The AMOs are based on reading and math scores on the SOLs. Now, the controversy is over the fact that the measures are based on race. Joining us to talk about this is Winsome Sears. She's a board member with the Virginia Board of Education. Hi, Winsome. How are you?
Good morning, Barbara.
So good to have you on the show. Great. So, Winsome, explain to our audience in a nutshell what you all determined in terms of these scores and why they're based on race.
Well, to begin with, this all started because of No Child Left Behind. And No Child Left Behind had some admirable goals, and one of which was that, and the most important, was that all children would be 100% proficient in the entire country by the year 2014. Well, that's a laudable goal, but there's no way in this universe that was ever going to happen. And so all of the states were finding themselves bumping up against this goal and realizing that the schools were just not going to be able to make it, and so everybody was failing left and right.
And when you say proficient, you mean that students would be working at grade level? Is that right?
Able to read, able to do math, 100% at grade level, every single child. And we all want that. That's what we all want, but it was not going to happen. And so what you're finding is that not just Virginia, but all of the states are trying to get flexibility in that area. We're all trying to get waivers so that we will be able to have a better measure of how these goals can be achieved so that our students can learn. Okay. And so Virginia is just the latest of all the states trying to get these waivers, and our flexibility waiver came in. So it is done by race because that's what No Child Left Behind states, that and that's a good thing. And let me tell you why. Because before, a school could say, well, our students are passing 92%. And that was a wonderful thing. So that's a 92% passing school. But because of No Child Left Behind, that was passed in 2002 under President Bush, we understood now that it dictated, well, the school is passing 92%. But how about the black students? How about the Asian students? How about the students with disabilities? How about the English language learners? What are they passing at? And so because of that, we realized, oh, my gosh, the school is doing very poorly. And so that's why we have it delineated by race, because the law tells us that we must do it by race.
But Winsome, the goal is set for 45% for African American students. The only group that is lower than African American students are disabled students. So what does that say to our kids when we're looking at the whole idea of being proficient and in school and being able to pass? Are we in essence telling them they can't do it, so therefore we're going to set this bar that low?
Write them off.
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness, no. And let me tell you, when you look at that, when you look at the chart that you're talking about, where it says that black students must meet 45%, whereas Asian students must meet
82%.
Mm-hmm. You say to yourself, wait, what are we saying about our black children? You know, I'm black. My kids were were taught in public schools, and I immediately started to get offended when it was presented to me until I understood what it was saying. Because when you look at it, that's the reaction you get. And here's what we're saying. We have tested the students in Virginia in the 2011 to 2012 cycle. Well, we do it every year, but, that's the latest cycle. And we discovered that black students are only passing at 45%. They're only passing at 45%. That's a major problem. Why are black students only passing at 45%? And so we said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We understand No Child Left Behind said everybody's going to pass at 100%. It's not working. So you are passing now. We've discovered that black students are passing at 45%. So here's the goal. We're setting the bar at 45% because that's the reality. We'd like them to pass at 100%. We'd like them to pass at 82%. My goodness, Asians are passing at 82%. Why not black students? But they're not.
Okay, Winsome, let's get a response from our roundtable. Will, you want to start?
Winsome, Wil LaVeist. There are two things that I heard you say that are kind of troubling to me. First, that there's no way in the world that those criteria were going to be met. And then that also you're saying at 45% is the reality, so that's what we should set it at. My question is, why aren't we looking at, okay, why those goals can't be met? And why is it 45% compared to the other students? And what needs to be done to change it? Because I know, as an African American who went through the public school system, who has children, I know that African American kids are intelligent, can learn at the same rates as anyone else and even higher. So why aren't we asking why is 45% the reality and what needs to be done to change that?
Oh, believe me, we are, because I am just as upset as I sit here talking to you. I'm getting upset all over again every time I talk about this because this is a problem for me. We are asking those questions. Why in this year, in this century, are black students only passing at 45%? Because that's what we're finding. So we say 45% is where we are. That's the reality. Next year, we want you to be passing at 52%.
No, but you're not answering my question. We've got to know at this point what is the reason for what is happening and what needs to be the intervention.
Exactly.
So let's put the intervention in.
We are doing those things. Here's what we're saying.
You're lowering the bar.
Let me do it. Let me do it.
Let her finish.
We're saying that it's 45%. So we're starting at 45%. We're saying school, if you go below 45%, then you're going to be subjected to a turnaround model.
No, you're not.
And here's what you're going to have to fire the principal, fire the teachers. There are 4 different turnaround models.
The principal and the teacher should be fired now because it's 45%.
Let's let Bill.
you've got to start somewhere. We never had the ability. You've got to go by the law.
Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman are rolling over in their graves right now. They're rolling over in their graves.
Let's let Bill talk. Go ahead, Bill.
Hey, Winsome, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
Sorry for your loss. We're praying for you, okay?
Thank you. I need it.
Yeah, you need it. Your daughter and my son went to Ruffner Middle School.
Yes.
And when we were there, I was the PTA president, and we just rolled up the standards. The city of Norfolk Public Schools put this program in 1992. And I argued they have a program where black kids have to get to this level and white kids have to get to this level. I'll send it to you. I wrote to Governor Gilmore and Secretary Will Bryant at the time. He said, this is outrageous. But I guess my difficulties with this, and Winston was a big fighter for Hampton University when her first tour of duty down in the House of Representatives, she put in a charter school bill for us. She worked very diligently for it, and we were trying to get at those kinds of things. And the only deal I have, Winston, is the fact that the system, as Will is saying, will not tolerate competition. They booted us out of the charter school business, and we were trying to start, and Dr. Harvey came up with a vision to start STEM education in 1999 and 2000. And those people just let it go. But Winston, lastly, we cannot set a bar that's different than what the schools has to have for everybody. A 45% pass rate, it means you're going to get no job. You're probably not going to get a degree. This is a waste of time. But
what I'm saying, Bill, is this. We have discovered that black kids are only passing at 45%.
My kids...
If they were passing at 82%, that's where the bar would be set. So right now we're saying it's 45. You can't go below 45. And by the way, we have said... School B, we found that your kids are the black kids in your schools are passing at 55. They can't go below 55. So we now have a process. We now have a system where we didn't have before because our hands were tied by the law. You couldn't close a public school. You couldn't close a public school if it were failing kids like it is. We have that ability now.
Just one more comment. I'm going to end after this. Winsome. Then we should close these government schools. We should close them and let them be competitive. This is enough.
Well, we have that ability now, and believe it or not, the State Board of Education, where I sit, we don't have that ability. It rests with a local school board. So
yes.
That's where you have to go.
Agree.
Carol.
And that's where the fight's going to be, to close the local schools, and you know that, because now we're going to get right back into race and Brown versus Board of Ed and all that. So that's where the problem. Now let me answer Mr. Chesley's question. Again, try to...
You mean Will LaVeist? Yeah, that's Will's. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I'm about to lose it in a second.
I'm going to let you all talk about this, but let's let Winston...
I couldn't call him Mr. Will LaVeist, so I figured...
That's fine. That works.
Go ahead.
Anyway, so here's the deal. We're saying, because, we get teachers and principals and superintendents who come before us at the board meeting every month, and they talk about why the kids aren't passing, why the kids aren't passing. And so I just finally got frustrated, and I said, I have a company, and my appliance repair company, I buy certain products. And if I get it from a supplier who gives me a consistently bad product, I don't buy from him anymore. Now, you as a teacher, as principals, as superintendents, you have a product, and for lack of a better term, that's we're going to say it's the students who come to you. And if you keep telling me that your students can't learn because it's a single-parent family, it's a poor neighborhood, the father isn't there, that this is happening, there's nobody at home, they're latchkey kids. Well, if these are your products and that's what you're getting, then you're telling me that these kids will never learn no matter what you do. I don't want to hear that anymore. That is a poor excuse. And so that's what we have to fight. We have to fight these terrible excuses which leads to low expectations, and that's what these standards will do. We're saying, okay, your kids are passing at 45. Next year, they better be passing at 52.
That ain't gonna happen.
The year after that, they better be passing until, so in 6 years, everybody we're expecting is to be at 73. And
which is
after
still
that,
low.
we have even,
I mean,
that's
Winston,
a
that's
no-job percentage.
That's still a low goal also. But
yeah,
you know
but
what?
Here's the deal. But what you don't understand is all of the students, no matter what we set it at the bar at, all students must still pass the SOLs. All students must still meet the graduation requirements. All of this still must happen. It still must happen. So we're saying individually, each student must pass the SOLs, and each student must meet the graduation requirements, otherwise no diploma. But what we have now are tools. We have benchmarks, and we're saying this is what we're finding. You can't go below that. We're not saying that black kids and white kids and Asian kids can only learn at these percentages. We're saying we've done the test, and my goodness gracious, this is where it is in this day and age, and it's got to get better. That's what we're saying.
All right,
and if
Winston,
not, the school is closed, the principal is fired. You got to set up a charter school. You got to reopen it. You don't open it. You send them to a higher achieving school. We have tools now that we didn't because our hands were tied.
Okay, Winston Sears, who is on the board of the Virginia School Board of Education. Winston, thanks so much for calling and giving us your perspective on this, and we're going to discuss it some more with the roundtable. We wish you a very Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Winston.
Merry Christmas.
Bye-bye, Winston.
Thank you.
Bye. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Okay, Roger, and then Carol, and then we'll go around.
Okay, a couple of points I want to make, and I'd written a column about this back in August. Two things. One, it almost feels as if the state is more concerned about meeting the benchmarks than having good aspirational goals.
Absolutely.
So that's the first thing, and that's very troubling given the number of years we've had the SOLs and given the number of years that NCLB has been in effect. But I do agree with Winsome on this point. Is that why are our students doing so poorly? And I've talked to at least a couple of educators about that. And some of the concerns is where are our students when they start school? Mm-hmm. Are we doing enough remediation? Are we doing enough extra work? You can have Saturday schools for those students if the school division and the parents of these students are willing to put in the extra time. I mean, some of it takes money, some of it takes extra work. But I am very concerned that we're saying, well, 45%, that's good enough. What child do you want to tell that less than half is considered good enough? I'm really troubled by that. And I'm troubled by the state saying, oh, yeah, well, the reality is we wouldn't be able to make it otherwise. Well, shoot. Get your reality a little bit different. Let's have some better aspirations, because usually when you dumb down standards, people only go to the standard that you have it at.
Absolutely.
Carol.
Yeah, I think my concern duplicates everybody's here. I understand the need for benchmark, but essentially, as an educator, my question is why? What are the specific problems that lead to students doing poorly? If it's a problem at home, how do we address that? If it's a problem with the teacher per se, what can we do to ensure that teachers are qualified and have the ability to reach these things? Why?
But and this is not just while we're talking about Virginia and what's going on in Virginia.
Richmond,
this is
Chicago,
happening
everywhere,
nationwide in terms of the lowering of standards for African American students. Will, I see you over here about to jump out your chair.
I mean, it's so sad, and I'm not personally attacking Winsome or anything, because I know and I've heard about her work and things she's been involved in. I know she cares. And that's what even makes it sort of sadder for me, is that here's someone who's championing a cause and is still not getting at the root that we're taking the position underlying all of this is the position that African Americans are inferior. Can't do it.
Yeah.
If my child, I've raised 3 children, you come home with a D.
Yo,
exactly.
You better not.
That is unacceptable.
You better try to figure out how to chase that.
We're going to figure out why you're getting that D, and I'm going to do all the intervention that needs to happen to change that D to an A.
Well, now their argument will be that they are parents who won't do that.
But what I'm saying is that they are putting in place a policy that is not saying that. See, when I would come home with a B, raised in public housing, my father would say, "Why you didn't get an A?"
Yeah.
Exactly.
What he was
Same thing my
saying to me
parents would say.
was, "Your standard is here.
Not
This
down
is
here.
what you shoot
Not
for."
in the gutter.
So because your reality is that you got to see, we're not accepting that as your reality.
Exactly.
That's your laziness. That's your need for intervention.
Hey, there you go.
So let's put the intervention in place. What they're doing is they're setting it up to say, okay, let's take the emphasis on us who are in a position to set these policies so that these kids can have a chance, and put it back on them and make it easier for folk to say it. And
I don't see any virtue in saying, well, you made the standard at 50. I'd rather you say, well, we didn't make 70 and we fell short, but the standard should be at 70.
70 or whatever it is.
It's 82% for Asian students, 68% for whites, 52% for Latinos, 45% for blacks, and 33% for kids with disabilities.
How can a generation of Latinos come over here the last 20 years and do better than us? This is outrage. How can we take this? I've told you guys, and y'all all frown up at me, we need to close these government schools in certain zip codes. You're going to have a half a generation of kids with a 45% passure rate that are going to get no jobs, absolutely none whatsoever, forever. And everybody just take it. And then again, our preachers and all of these good deed people are out there patting themselves on the back and got this accolade, that accolade. And 50% of our kids are failing. And now you're telling all kids, hey, you black, you guys got to get 50 or 45. How about 0? And the last part is they changed the grading level. They pushed that down. You can't fail a class in Norfolk or Portsmouth. You get a 65. I mean, and they changed age to range to, and they've done everything and it still hasn't worked. And the problem is racism. Because what didn't happen, and I love white folks all to death, but they didn't want their kids in the class with these little black kids, and so now they got a way to get them out of there. And so that is what is really going on here. That's the root of the cause. Not all, but too many. And then too many of my African American brothers are doing the same thing. I can go through this. I'll call out names. Gerald Jones, Ken Melvin, Billy Robinson, when we were in the General Assembly, none of them sent their kids to public schools. So it ain't all white folks.
Well, but I mean, people have choices in terms of where
these kids over
they
here
want
in
to
these
educate their
projects
kids.
don't
They
have
all
no
have
choice. They give them the same choice. Close the school and give the money to the parents.
One of the things
ahead.
you're suggesting is you wouldn't give a lot of these kids in public housing choice because you want to close public schools. I think the thing to do is try to improve.
Get a voucher.
No, I think the thing to do is improve all schools.
Right.
It ain't going to happen.
Yeah,
It's not going to happen.
And that's where I'm at. Why are we saying it ain't going to happen as if and accepting
because
we ain't going to happen as the reality?
Did you know?
Here's let me put in a little quick one
at a time
to help the people such as yourself who send their children to private schools or students who graduate from top schools that are African American. When you put in place this mindset that African Americans that are intellectually inferior, what it means is the African American who makes it to Harvard is going to be perceived in Harvard as being inferior. When he graduates or she graduates from school and now is sitting in front of someone to get a position at a law firm, she or he's going to be perceived as inferior. It's happening right now. It's happening among professionals who have done all the right things, gone to school, got all the degrees, did all of this and that and the other, and still is sitting in front of offices and are still being perceived as inferior.
I think your eyes are closed. I think you're a big liberal, just unrealistic person.
There was nothing liberal about what I just said.
In Norfolk and in Richmond and probably Petersburg, the whole school system is broke. They put them out of existence. In Richmond and Norfolk, 18 and 19 African-American men graduate from the whole school system with a B average. Now, the system is gone. It doesn't work for black people. And even W.B. Du Bois got wind of this, and he set up the talented 10th. We're going to have to do something to recapture our dignity, our respect for education and for other people. And these kids that come to school that don't have any morals, don't have any values, we got to separate them out. Because they're destroying our race. Because we're not being educated.
So you mean there's no help for them at all? We just say, oh, well.
You help them.
Well, Bill, do you really believe we have to give up on
God, I don't think.
I mean, that's almost like
I don't think we can afford to give up on anybody.
I really believe that Bill really believes that.
Oh,
because
yes, I do.
my point, Bill, is that even the African Americans who are among the talented 10th will be tainted. They will find their opportunities limited.
We know
you want to believe that?
They got to work twice as hard. They got to do it twice as good. They just got to make it happen.
And they will still be stigmatized when they are in the boardroom.
Create
and
your
have the
own
opportunity.
business. Stop depending on white people to be the servant, the job
and when
creators.
your business has to do business out in the open market, you will be perceived as being inferior.
The market now is globalized.
In the global market, you will be perceived as being inferior.
You'll be perceived as how you see yourself, not by what somebody says. My mom would say, don't answer somebody who calls you a name.
And Winsome just said, if you are giving me an inferior product, I'm going to do business with someone else. Mm-hmm. So if I believe you are inferior, you are producing inferior products, I'm not going to do business with you. And that's why we have the kind of rates where the right here in Virginia, where minority businesses are getting 0.007% of contracts.
Oh, poor. Somebody stop.
Okay. We got to move on to another topic.
I can say this.
My point is,
as somebody who sent his kids to Catholic schools and paid the tuition for it, my point is, if you're going to send your kids to whatever school, you want them to have opportunity. Yes. You want them to succeed. Exactly. And the point is, I do not feel that the benchmarks that are set are helping our kids to succeed. And I want all of our kids to succeed, regardless of where they go to school.
As well.
Okay, if you're just joining us, we're talking about issues facing the African American community with our roundtable, Virginian-Pilot columnist Roger Chesley, Carol Pretlow, professor of political science at NSU, community activist Bill Thomas, and author, journalist, and talk show host Wil LaVeist. Let's talk about the fiscal cliff for just a moment. Angela Claypool is a senior consultant with Trace Success Consulting LLC and a blogger. Her blog is called The Crapshoot, and she was one of 100 small business owners called to the White House to talk about the fiscal cliff and how the tax hike will impact the business community. She spoke with Another View's Lisa Godley.
It is a rare occurrence where you can sit 100 people down in a room and they all agree on anything. It is even rarer that happens in Washington. So I won't tell you that everybody in the room thought it was a beautiful idea and everything about the idea that they liked. But what I was very interested in is that these are the vast majority of the people that the tax hikes will affect. And they're even behind the plan. Because what is in everyone's best interest is to make sure the middle class is able to continue to spend. And when I say spend, I don't mean in terms of borrow and spend. I mean have real discretionary income. If I was someone who was sitting listening to this, who had an opposing view of the president's plan, I wouldn't be just concerned about how much we reduce our deficit by, although that would be a concern of mine. And to that, I will say that the president's plan reduces the deficit by $640 billion over the course of the next 10 years. So those spending cuts do exist. What would be more impactful would be, is our economy strengthened? Because what really changes how much deficit we carry and what really changes how effective we are as an economy is how much of a GDP we have. And I don't want to get into the wonking of it because it just makes it go totally over most people's heads, mine included. But what I will say is that the more money that our economy generates, the smaller all of our woes become in general.
So you guys frustrated with the fiscal cliff conversations, negotiations, non-negotiations?
Will?
No?
Because this is all a bunch of posturing and show. It's not going to happen. They realize that if they allow this country to sink into an economic abyss, they will lose their jobs in Washington, and they're not about to lose their cushy jobs in Capitol Hill. It's not going to happen.
So this is just like before, where they're just going to take us down to the wire, Carol?
Yeah, I think it's all about political posturing. I said I'm going to talk to so-and-so. They say no, back and forth, and at the end, nothing gets accomplished.
You know, before I told you to let the banks go bankrupt. So at the very beginning, 4 years ago, why? And nobody's gone to jail with that stuff. They stole $3 or $4 trillion. Nobody's gone to jail, and just let them go bankrupt. Let America go over the cliff. I don't care. Save your money. Have cash. Use cash. Don't be dependent upon this government. Cash is going to be king.
Oh, Bill. I agree a lot with Will on this. I think there will finally be some type of deal. We're in a very tenuous position right now because we have to try to get we don't want to go into a full-scale depression. We have to do some things in terms of the spending side. We have to do some things on the taxing side, and we have to do it in a balanced way that allows people to still be able to spend, to still be able to have jobs. You know, I hate the posturing that goes on both sides of the aisle. I think it's more posturing on the Republican side of the aisle because they had an opportunity to cut spending, and they didn't do it when they were in control under President George W. Bush. So, you know, and we got into two wars where we weren't really showing the cost of those wars on the budget. So, yeah, we've got big problems. We have to do this in a systematic, reasonable way. And let's face it, a lot of folks on both sides of the aisle also know that their constituents like the entitlements that are taking so much of the budget. They like Medicaid, they like Medicare, they like Social Security. And when you start talking about messing with the regulations and the guidelines for that, people get a little bit nervous, and those people tend to vote. So you know, we've got to deal with some things, and everybody has to make some sacrifices.
Well, hopefully they will resolve it before the end of the year, and if they don't, then we go over the fiscal cliff.
Republicans and Democrats are two sides of the same coin. They are not different. I don't know why Bill calls me a liberal. I'm right on the edge. I'm right on the edge. Whoever's making the most sense, that's the side I'll move to for my own interest.
Well, fiscally, you are getting more to the middle, so I have to give you credit on that. Socially,
no, I've never been on the left. That's Roger. I'm in between the two of you crazy extremists.
Okay, our last topic, and I wanted to leave some time for this because I have never seen the roundtable interact as much offline about a topic as you all did when Jovan Belcher, who was a linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs, murdered his girlfriend Cassandra Perkins, then killed himself. And then we had also another NFL player with a DUI, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the name.
Two Dallas Cowboys players.
Okay, two Dallas Cowboy players, yes. And it sparked an entire conversation about homicides in the African American community, particularly black on black crime. And Lisa did some research, and I want you guys to just listen to this for just a second. As of, I believe it was Wednesday or Thursday of this week, yesterday, as of yesterday, in Norfolk, there were 33 overall homicides. 30 of them were African Americans.
My Lord.
In Portsmouth, 11. 8 of them were African Americans. In Chesapeake, 12 homicides, 10 African Americans. In Virginia Beach, 19 overall homicides, 7 African Americans. Newport News, 20 overall homicides, 17 African Americans. Hampton had 13 homicides, 11 of them were African American. And Suffolk, which had the fewest number, they had 2. They can't tell us what the race is. Go figure. Anyway, the point being, and the majority of the suspects in these cases are African American.
Right.
What's going on in our community? And Bill, I know this is something real dear to your heart. Why are we killing each other?
We don't have values. I mean, we don't like ourselves. We're lowering ourselves and lowering our tiers, so like Winston was saying, to this 45% thing. We have devalued what we used to appreciate. Doug Water and I have talks about this, and he said this kind of stuff just never happened when we were coming up. It'd be 1 or 2. I tried to go back to my entire life growing up in Kansas City. I can only remember 2 people that were murdered. 2, and there were soldiers and stuff involved in it. We are raising kids. I know y'all don't like hearing it. They're monsters. They have no values. And people say, "Oh, Bill, you're saying that." No, it's true. They don't care. They'll kill you for a dime. Right down here in North Carolina, I don't know, one little city there, a guy went and robbed a white couple at a cash machine and took a tire iron and busted their heads wide open. I mean, what kind of community will raise up little monsters like this? And there's good people. And the overwhelming amount of people in these communities are good, great, religious, and everything else. But we have a sliver, and I'm just talking about black people. I'm not talking about white people right now. But when we have more murders a year than we lost in all of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, we get about 77,000 a year. When we have kids murdered on their way to school in Chicago, 300 to 400, and there's no moral outrage whatsoever. And Trayvon, when he was murdered, a year ago or so?
Yeah.
And then our kids are killed on the streets, killed right down here at First Baptist, right down on Butte Street, and right down the street St.
Those
John.
aren't kids, but they are black males.
I'm just saying,
black males.
Where is Jesse Jackson? Where is Al Sharpton? Where are the ministers? I mean, they show no value, so the kids just go out here and just do what they want.
Roger?
You know, and I've written about this earlier this year, too. Back in 2008, it was the latest year for statistics. The FBI reported that there were 6,782 black victims that year, most of them male. And that was 40% of the victims that year. But of course, we're only about 13% of the population. And as you said, most of the time, the victim and the perpetrator are of the same race, whites and blacks. I agree with Bill on this much. There seems to be almost a self-loathing among us sometimes on a large scale. Back in 1992, I went to Gary, Indiana, to try to get at the whole instance of why there were so many young people being killed, injured, and the like. And one of the police inspectors, lieutenants at the time, said, it was probably about Bill's age now, and he said, you know, it just seems like we don't love each other that much anymore. And he was black as well. Mm-hmm. And you wonder about the whole value. I mean, yes, guns are a part of this because it's so easy to injure or kill somebody else if you have a gun. But what is the mindset of the people that are holding these weapons? Absolutely. Why do we seem to have such almost a disdain or hatred for one another? And we don't always even know one another when we're victims in some of these incidents.
Carol?
Do you think this has something to do with the cohesiveness of the African American community? The idea that we are so divided, not only educationally, but in class, income, education, and so that separation. Whereas there was a time when I was growing up, yes, there were educated people, there were uneducated, but we all kind of held together. We were together, and this togetherness produced a different kind of rationale or thinking about things.
You asked Bill, just before I get to you, Will, about where's Jesse Jackson and so forth. There was a meeting, 60 of America's leading civil rights and social justice business community leaders got together in D.C. to present to President Obama the agenda for the black community for his second term. And I'm looking at the steps, the things that were important. Achieve economic parity for African Americans, promote equity in educational opportunity, protect and defend voting rights, promote a healthier nation by eliminating healthcare disparities, achieve comprehensive reform for the criminal justice system. There's nothing about us killing each other. You know,
it really is amazing. I know growing up, I'm in the early 50s now, and growing up in my neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. at that time, I might worry about getting beat up or running up against some thugs who just want to hassle me. Right. I didn't worry about getting killed. Yeah. I mean, I don't know too many parents now that are happy when their kids are out in the street after it turns dark. Absolutely. You know, much less when it's light. You can still get killed then. But, I mean, it's just in a couple of generations what has happened among our people. And I think a lot of it also goes to what's going on in our households, because a lot of what your outcome is going to be is how you're trained, how you're parented, and, you know, who your role models are. I mean, so much of that starts within the household.
Well, you sent an article about the public housing unit where you grew up.
Yeah, in the Tilden houses in Brownsville,
and they were
Brooklyn.
talking about how parents now won't allow their children to go outside.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough when I grew up there in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, and it's even worse now with gangs being pervasive, and and the murder rates being as high as those numbers that you said. I agree with all of what all of my colleagues have said. The difficulty that I had, the problem that I have with what Bill said about them being animals. Is that I said it's
monsters? They're not animals.
I'm sorry.
They're monsters.
Monsters, which is still dehumanizing them. And that's really the point. It actually ties into our earlier segment in that you recognize there's a problem, but instead of saying, let's look at the system, let's look at not just their reaction to it, because what these killings are a reaction to being in an environment, a system that is creating problems, and a system that is not just easy and simple to just define. So when we talk about when we grew up and how it was, okay, when we grew up and how it was, that was prior to the crack epidemic. I went away to college when crack hit, and I lost a whole lot of people during that time. When I was coming up, my father being in a household and fathers being in a household was still in the majority. My parents split when I was 12. I was part of that trend that started going towards more and more kids growing up in single parent homes. So a lot has happened since then. So what I'm saying is that we have to look at the system and how these people are reacting to a situation, and then put in some kind of intervention and say, okay, what needs to be done? Because when you just say that they're just monsters, what you're doing, you're putting the solution back on them again, and that's not the solution.
Back on who?
We've got to be told back on the people who are perpetrating. And again, I start off saying I agree that values have broken down. But we've got to look at, okay, how do we now, what role do we play in teaching people how to be able to be functional in the environment, in the situation they find themselves in?
How do we also teach them? Because one thing I hear a lot of young people saying when they are angry and they're pushing back is that he disrespected me. This whole thing about respect. But it sounds to me, though, that there's a different definition as far as they're concerned about respect. And if someone accidentally bumps into you,
they'll shoot you.
That's not disrespecting you. You know, but where does that come from?
But
where does that
it doesn't come from me or
from?
you. It comes from the environment they're being brought up in, and there's nothing we can do about that. I mean, I'm just
I disagree.
But
See,
no,
there is nothing you can do about it.
But Bill, here's the thing: there are plenty of people who grow up in low-income neighborhoods who come out and who are successful. So what makes them different from the kid who decides that they're not going to be?
Actually, that you are absolutely 100% true. And you can almost look at a kid and almost tell whether or not he has been raised
properly. But what
properly.
is it about that? Where does that come from? Is what I'm trying to get to.
See, you and I are on the same page. He keeps running away from that.
I'm not
running
away from it.
And the more you run away from that, the more you just put it on that kid.
I'm done.
To now fix
done.
Right.
I'm not going to accept it anymore.
And I appreciate what you're saying. But let me finish my point. Let me finish my point. What makes them different is that everybody comes here with something, I believe. People come here with a different type of initiative and all those things. And then there's also environmental. So what I'm saying is it's a combination of all of these things that helps produce a person who they are. Otherwise, why do you have people who grow up with all the privileges and then throw their lives away?
Right.
So instead of just saying that it's all on the person, what I'm saying is that we've got to look at what is it that our system is producing and how can the system be changed and how can we make intervention. And now if you're in a situation where you've got the intervention, you've got people who are helping you, and you still throwing it away, then I'm firmly in Bill's camp, because I have two sons who I know are more at risk of being gunned down by another black male. I've been in that situation. So I'm firmly in his camp. If you got people trying to help you and you throwing it away, which is the case that also exists. But until that happens, I'm not in that camp of just throwing people away.
I just heard on the news, a Jordan Davis was gunned down, 17-year-old kid in Florida, by a white man who was standing his ground just today. And the issue with one of the African-American children who got murdered over there in Portsmouth last week, he went to protect his brother. Outstanding student, straight A's, whole 9 yards. And when he tried to get his brother out of the situation, the idiot, fool, monster sit there and shot that boy down like he was a dog. And what I'm going to say, when my son was dragged away from that music place over there next by MacArthur Center and taken over here in this park over here, laid on the ground with his three white friends by some fools talking about they're going to blow their brains out and vanish the gun. No, then you talk to me. I'm done with it. I'm tired of it. There's no excuses. This has got to stop. And our leadership don't want to deal with it. Everybody's turning a blind eye to it. And it's enough. You tell me how you can take a 16-year-old who doesn't know decency and then make them different. They never went to church. Their parents never lived the right kind of life, didn't raise them right, and you're going to do something with them? I would rather take that money and start with the 3-year-olds and put every kind of intervention program you can to support them, and let these other idiots go to jail, go to
you just
a
described,
farm,
you just described, for example, you just described Malcolm X. You just described Malcolm X.
You mean throw them away and endanger our society even more. So when you throw them away and say, okay, I'm through with them, I'm done, I don't care about them, that creates a whole group of people who will create.
And you'll never get a Malcolm X. And you'll never get a Malcolm X.
253,000 of our black brothers and sisters have died on the street. These idiots are killing, choking, shooting. This idiot Kansas City football player shot this young lady 9 times. One I can understand. I'm crazy. You mess with me. I shot you.
Well, I can't understand
8 other
one.
times.
Yeah.
And so I'm sick of it.
One.
I'm sick of them.
I'm sick of it too, but throwing them away isn't the solution.
I do wish there were more of a national dialogue and a national sense of urgency among black folks that, there are whole generations of folks that have died, and we seem to be saying, ho hum, let's deal with it.
Roger.
And I think I understand you can be upset about what happened to Trayvon Martin, but my goodness, that was one person. We know how many people get killed in our communities every year, most of them black, regardless if the city is majority black or not. And to me, it's so frustrating, and I think the reason why a lot of us don't want to tackle it is because we know how hard the task is.
And there are groups out there who are trying to tackle it.
And the other thing, Barbara, and just a quick point, and I haven't done this research, but I would ask you all to, ask Lisa to do the research and look at some other countries, like, for example, Belfast, Ireland. Look at some other countries where you have people under, oppressed condition, and see how they behave and see how they react. You see, because what we start to do is we start to say, well, this is a black problem. And what that also does is that just limits it to, well, that's something for those folks to handle. And what I'm trying to say is that if you put any group of people under certain kinds of circumstances, you're going to get certain types of behavior. So now how do you now teach those people and look at your system, your society, and see what needs to be changed as well as what they need to do to be able to not behave in that manner? It goes back to your question about what makes them different. And we all know those answers.
They don't
it's
have
about
any home
family.
training.
Right. It's about all those things.
They don't believe in any kind of God. They don't have any morals. They don't have any values.
And there are people who have morals and values who still go and just blow people away.
Very few.
So what I'm saying
numbers
again. Is that
it is a black problem.
Put those things in place. Statistics. Let's look at how do you put those things in place.
Look at the statistics that you just told you.
Before you just throw people away. Because what Bill is saying, you never get a Malcolm X in that situation if you just don't give people an opportunity, a shot to be able to navigate themselves through a bad situation.
Because people do turn themselves around at some point, don't they, Bill?
And make tremendous changes.
Well, you can make changes, but the fact of the matter is we have got a serious problem. When you get that much of a disproportionate gap, where we're 13% of the population and 40% of the homicide victims in a year. That's a problem.
That's insane.
And we need to deal with that. We need to deal with that as a people. The country needs to deal with that. It's not just our problem, but we are a big part of the problem, and we have to be a big part of the solution.
Carol, I'm going to let you have the last word on this because we only got about 3 minutes left.
Yeah, I think my last word is what I have always said, that yes, we identify the problem, then we try to figure out what the solutions are for those problems. And as we approach those solutions, we identify, is it psychological, then what needs to be done? Is it educational, then what do teachers like me need to do to lift kids up or to keep them away or to help them or motivate them to choose something different. We don't just toss them out because then we're creating a bottom line for further criminality.
That's right.
Well,
That's
Bill,
right.
I mean, you toss them away. The jails are already overwhelmingly African American.
Exactly.
Why?
In terms of
so they didn't commit a crime, or
I didn't say they didn't commit a crime, but what I'm saying is, what the question is, what is going on in society that so many
but you're
of
not hearing
one
what I'm
particular
saying.
group
I'm saying
find themselves
let's
in
get
that
the
in that
let's get the 3-year-olds. Let's put our resources in them. Let's start there, and let's stop.
You're still running from it. You're still running from the fundamental question you're asking, which is the same one I was asking.
I'm running as fast as I can.
You're still running from
kill me.
And I mean, I appreciate his frustration and passion and all. I understand it, but that's why we're not. That's why we're not getting to the solution.
Absolutely. 2 minutes left. What's Santa Claus going to bring you, Roger?
I don't know what Santa. I might have been naughty this year, so I really don't know yet.
Oh, we know you've been naughty.
Carol?
Good health, enjoyment of what I do.
Okay. Bill?
Love and happiness.
Oh, really?
Are
we going to get Bill married off this year?
He's moving his shoulders back and forth.
Will?
Hey, Santa Claus is going to bring me a wonderful grades from two of my young people back home in college and doing well, and I just thank God for them and my family and my wife and everyone.
Well, don't take them down to Portsmouth, man.
Now, Bill. We are not going to paint any city in the seven cities in
Richmond,
that way.
Or Richmond, or Petersburg.
Please, stop it.
At any rate, Roundtable, this is the last one for 2012.
Yeah.
I so appreciate you all, and you will be back in 2013, correct?
All right.
We
Yes,
will
we will.
continue these conversations, and I wish all of you a very Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, if that happens to be your persuasion. I'm not making any judgments all the way across, so you could be any of the above.
And God bless the United States of America.
Amen.
It is so blessed to be here.
Yes.
And all of his warts.
Yes.
And all of his faults.
All of his
Wouldn't want to be
problems.
anywhere
We love
else.
you.
And we'll be right back.
Mother, there's too many of you to cry. Brother.
And welcome back. Time now for things to view and do in Hampton Roads.
You will be my Saturday love.
Andrea McCardle, the original Broadway Annie, is in concert at the Kimball Theater in Williamsburg on Sunday, December 16th for two performances, 2 and 7:30. Tickets are available. Call 757-714-1958 for details. Own your own business or thinking of starting one, but you're just not sure if your product is business worthy? Check out the Entrepreneur Product Development course at the Peninsula Workforce Development Center, Butler Farm Road in Hampton. It's a 20-hour course that will help you avoid common mistakes made by entrepreneurs. You must register by December 20th as class size is limited. Call 757-865-3128. NASA is looking for female high school juniors for their WISH program, Women in STEM High School Aerospace Scholars. Selected students will complete online STEM courses and chart a course for Mars at the Johnson Space Center in Houston in the summer. Deadline for applications is January 3rd, 2013. Visit wishaerospacescholars.org for more information. And if you're looking for something to do early on New Year's Eve and you love jazz, then come party with Lim Summerall's Hotel Paradise Roof Garden Orchestra, featuring the soulful sounds of Miss Becky Livis. WHRV's very own Neil Murray, host of Saturday Night Fish Fry, will be your MC. The party is at the Night of the Iguana, Hampton Boulevard, Norfolk, from 6 until 8. Call 533-5151 to reserve your table. These and other events are on our website, anotherviewradio.org. And while you're on our site, please sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. And all of our broadcasts are on the website as well. So download the podcast and share it with a friend. You might want to listen to today's show again, too, because it was a good one. Next week on Another View, family dynamics during the holidays. Our favorite relationship coach, Alvian Lyons, will have some tips to help you get through the holidays with your nerves intact. For producer Lisa Godley, audio engineer Perry Smith, Lincia Smith, who answered the phones, and we did get a couple of calls. We weren't able to get to them. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Have a great weekend, and let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.